Class, welcome to week 3. Guess where we are? Yes, you guessed it. If you look back here, we are in Greece this week. Oh my God. I had the opportunity to go to Greece also several years ago. Military, thank God for the Air Force and the opportunities that I've had. And you know what? It looked exactly like this in person. Just imagine us as a class. We're sitting out on this little veranda, you know, with a gyro, and you got your grappa and some Greek olives and the cheese. And we start talking about risk assessments in the Capstone. Is that a great time or what? Isn't that exactly what you would want to be doing while you're vacationing in Greece? I know. So this is going to be a great week as we go into week 3 of our Capstone. What are we doing this week? Hey, doesn't matter what we're doing. You're always going to get this slide because everything that we're always talking about is based on what? Risk. That risk definition is, again, every week. You should know it by now, right? The likelihood of a threat agent taking advantage of a vulnerability and the corresponding business impacts. So this week, we're talking about data gathering methods. How do we start gathering data? Specifically, we're talking about administrative types of data, okay? Because when we look at, in any organization, there are administrative processes in data. There's technical attributes and the data associated with that, as well as physical attributes within that organization that have a risk posture to them. So when we think about data, there are many different approaches, right? You can try to do population or sampling. So what's the difference? Population, if I'm trying to collect data on the entire population, that's a huge effort unless I have a very small population. If it's a small organization, I only have 10 servers, 15 workstations or 20 workstations, and 35 employees, right? Then yeah, I could probably look at everything. However, in most larger organizations, you have way too many assets to be able to do that. So that's why you want to do sampling. You're just going to take a sample of the population to look at. That's what in the organization, the business where I work at, the company I work for. That's what we do with many things with respect to data gathering. We're going to look at a sample every week. Sample 10 of these and be sure that antivirus is properly updated or certain things are done, or 20%. So you do some type of sampling. As you're doing your project, please, think about how you want to approach data collection. One method that the textbook uses and recommends a lot is what is called the RIOT method. That is review, interview, inspect, observe, and test. Great method, and many things. This is what you're going to probably have to do is use this method because there are certain things, and as you look at risk and risk attributes in your organization, you won't have the ability to do a first-hand analysis of. So you will probably have to review, the data, the infrastructure, the architecture, then interview the people, like whether it's your IT team, it could be people who maintain your physical infrastructure. Your information owners, those are sometimes people you have to interview. And now you take that back and you inspect that criteria, you observe how the operation runs, and then you do some type of maybe even tabletop tests to gather some type of data. One area specifically, incident response, right? If you think about incident response, you don't want to create an incident, a real incident, just to be able to collect data. No. That's why you want to have tabletop exercises. You review the policy. You interview, your IT team to find out how will they back up and recover systems, and that's how that RIOT method comes in to play. Like I said, so that's some of the best ways to utilize the RIOT method is things that are destructive in nature or can cause disruption to the organization. So when we're talking about administrative data gathering, these are some types of things that we look at for of administrative resources, like human resources, HR side of the house. When we're looking at risk assessment with the HR, as far as how people are recruited, different safeguards, how within that, how you bring people on board, your onboarding processes, your employment processes where you do employee reviews and things of that nature, as well as your offboarding processes where you may have to terminate people or people leave voluntarily. Now, are there risks associated with each one of those? You bet it is. And the human factor in most businesses is rare. Your threats really exist, not just in the techie side, but it's the human side. That are we vetting people properly before we bring them into an organization? How are we doing? Like I say, doing their evals, annual evals, and watching how they're working day to day. And when they leave, are they disgruntled? Where they may have, especially if they're your IT team and things like that, they could have planted a logic bomb or some type of APT, advanced persistent threat in that system. Very important. Same with information control. Now, how are we controlling information as it flows through? Now, these are the administrative processes, like user accounts. Are we managing and monitoring how user accounts are set up? How assets are controlled? Do we have, total asset visibility of everything that's on our network and who has access to those assets? And how is auditing done in this environment? Business continuity, we touched on it briefly, right? With things like incident response and contingency plans. How are these things laid in? And also disaster response. Your whole, BCP process for business continuity planning. System controls, like say, how is application, and this is from a policy perspective. When we think about it from an administrative data gathering, what policies do we have to control application security? Your change management. Do you have a configuration control board? And this is a big one. This one over here, third party access, because now all these businesses wants to work together. Want to do data sharing, information sharing between third party. Excuse me. Suppliers and customers who now wants to be able to have access into our network, and we want to share information with them on their network. So what type of system security policies, administrative policies, do we have in place to control this? Also, organizational structure. This is huge. Many times we blow right by this. How is your senior management staff, your security program, security operation, how things are audited? So from a programmatic perspective, is there a risk associated with the organizational structure? Because your organizational structure controls the flow of information across your organization. You can be very vertically aligned, you can be horizontally aligned, you can be a matrixed organization. So all those impact how information is flows, how it's stored, who has access to it. So the administrative policies and data gathering, when you look at your risk assessment, are very key, very critical things. So I'm just going to build this out. So as you're looking at that, it comes down to now, how do we start putting security controls in place to cover that? Now, when we think about this, we're going to talk about this, I think in week 6, maybe, I don't remember, but this 9 cell, okay, and because there's actually 9 cells, the way it's laid out. So we look at security controls, and I'm basing this on NIST 853, that's where I have a lot of my background from the federal government. So you see that we have ways that we can break out and look at controls, okay? Because if you look at it from a perspective, we have administrative controls, you have physical controls, and you have technical controls. Now, these controls also, they could be preventative in nature, they could be detective in nature, or they could be corrective in nature. So if you look at this kind of like a metrics, I can have like let's say a background check. A background check is an administrative control that's preventative in nature, meaning that I'll do a background check on an individual before I hire them. So, because if I see something that's nefarious, I want to prevent that from coming into our organization. What about an intrusion detection device? Well, that's a technical control, but it's also detective. So this starts laying out a way of logically looking at your control families. Like here, these are all your access controls, right? So you can look at these and start seeing which sets of controls do I need to start putting in place based on whether they are administrative, whether they're technical, or whether they are physical controls, whatever it may be. Now, this isn't always clean cut, because there are some things that could actually fall in multiple categories, like a security guard, right? Security guard is a physical control, but it could be preventative, it could be detective, and it could be corrective. It could actually fit in all 3 of these categories. You say preventive, yes. Just the presence of a security guard in a facility prevents many individuals from doing things. Oh man, there's the guard. Okay, I'm not going to do what I was going to do. Detective, that security guard does he or she, they're inspecting, they do their rounds, their security checks, and so they're detecting anything that may be out of place. Corrective, now we've had something happen, the security guards have to show up to correct that situation. So this control matrix, like I say, pair it with whatever control set you may use, whether it could be COBIT or PCI DSS, whichever. Like I say, this is really based on NIST 853. However, you're going to notice that most of these controls are basically the same. There's a lot of overlap between all the different control families. but it gives you a way now to start logically approaching where these controls fit within with respect to whether they're going to provide administrative, they're mitigating administrative risk, if they're mitigating physical risk, technical risk. So let's go a little bit deeper in controls. Again, I'm based this again on the NIST 853. So if you look at these control families, like I said, there's a lot of control families. Actually, and Rev 5, Revision 5, just added a supply chain risk management family. So you got access control, awareness and training, auditing, security assessments, all the way down the list. I'm not going to read all these, but you see the PE, we got the physical environment, and these are families. Now, in each of these, there are 24 controls, like in the access control, there are 24 actual controls. However, each of these controls have sub-controls, so there's over 89 sub-controls. So when you start doing the math on this, you're hitting over 900 controls that you could possibly implement in your environment. Fortunately, that's what categorization is for, so that now you can tailor these controls down to based on how your system is categorized, which is based on what? Confidentiality, integrity, and availability, whether it's whether you're high or low or medium risk value for confidentiality or integrity availability. When you do that, that now starts tailoring down this control set to maybe something a lot more manageable, anywhere from 300 to 500 controls to implement. So when we talk about a control, what is it? If you've never been in the environment, so this is what if you open up NIST 853 and you look at the control AC2, which is account management, right? Account management. So what does that give you? Well, first, that is the control ID. The control ID is AC2. Control title is account management. Underneath that, it has the actual control, the NIST verbiage. This is what this control does. The organization says that the organization will identify, selects the following types of information system accounts to support organizational missions, business functions, and I know the NIST does it, and I know some others. Sometimes you'll see a control with the brackets. And what this bracket is so very important that most of us blow right over. This is your organizational assignment. What this does is allows you to define within your organization how, like in this case, the account types. Because if you don't identify that, it makes it very difficult to try to implement this control. So organizational defined information system account type. It could be a general user account, a priv user account. You may have group accounts. It could be service accounts, emergency accounts, temporary accounts. So you see there's multiple types of accounts that you have. Now you get to define that within your organization. So that was A, and B is assigned account managers, and C is established conditions for group enrolled members. So you see, and actually this goes on. This is just a short snippet. This goes on to like H, or I think, if I'm not mistaken. So anyway, so that's the control. But now it also gives you NIST supplemental guidance. And with this supplemental guidance, it now takes this and amplifies it to where it makes a little more sense, right? So now it gives you examples of account types. So that way you can manage that better. So that's how you would read a security control. It would look the same if you were using NSF or CISA, any of these other control types that's used. So they all follow the basically the same premise. And so whether you are, again, collecting data, but as you start to collect this data, now you start thinking, okay, yeah, I've got to collect data based on whether it's administrative, technical, or if it's physical protections or mitigations. And these are all then going to start mapping to what type of control sets you're going to use going forward in the future. Hey, listen, guys, hope you have a great week 3. Again, remember to reach out. We got the 30-minute session we're going to do, and God bless. Enjoy it.